Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and I've got an esteemed panel back to do a very fun show on the band Motley Crue. This show is best song, worst song, each album. So we're going to start off with Too Fast for Love in 1981, right through to Saints of Los Angeles in 2008. So going through the crew that we have here to talk crew, we've got Melissa Nee. Hello, Melissa. Pleased to see you back.
Thanks for having me.
Michael Ladano of Grab a Stack of Rock and the Contrarians. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
And the wonderful Joe B. Always good to have you on, mate.
Thanks for having me on, Peter. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So this is just going to be a fast and furious show. A lot of fun. So why don't we get started? We'll talk about the first album, the debut, as they say in Australia, for Too Fast for Love of 1981. Melissa, what is your best song, worst song?
So the best song on this album for me is Live Wire, which is, for me, one of the best Motley Crue songs in general. This is where when they first came out, I really liked Motley Crue. I mean, my fondness of them deteriorated as it went on, as time went on. But early on, I mean, I was sort of at that right age group for this kind of stuff. You know, it was really the beginnings of what was going to become the glam scene over in LA. They definitely were people that you could tell had listened to 70s rock. They were definitely influenced by the 70s stuff that even I was listening to, even though I'm a little bit younger than them. And so I did really like them a lot. And I liked Live Wire. I thought Live Wire was a really good song.
Good stuff. And your least favorite song on the album?
I have like a list because I have so much. So I have two. A little bit.
Breaking the rules already. That's okay.
I know. Yeah. Well, Come On and Dance and Tonight.
Okay. And
you will see kind of a theme with this, with my worst songs, because I really have a problem with Motley Crue doing ballads.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thanks, Melissa. Great opener. Michael Ladano, best song, worst song off this album?
Off my favorite Motley Crue album. I don't know if you guys know this, but in Canada, the default version of Too Fast for Love was the Leather Records version. That was the version that I grew up with. I didn't know there was another mix. So my picks, you know, the mixes in some of these cases are drastically different. So, you know, for you guys, my number one pick, Starry Eyes, you might not like the version on the Elektra Records mix, but the Leather Records mix, man, I love it. And there's so much to love about Starry Eyes. The chorus, it's a little bit more spacey than other Motley Crue songs. You know, dare I say, you know, maybe it's a little bit more advanced than some of the other songs on the album. I love certain things about it, like the squeak of Mick Mars's fingers on the strings. You can really hear it prominently during the chorus. I love that so much. Yeah, Starry Eyes, my favorite. Hard to pick a least favorite, but I ended up going with Merry-Go-Round and Round, Merry-Go-Round and Round, because it goes on, and it's a little bit on the repetitive side. You know, having said that, it was a hit with the fans. It got played live plenty of times, so, you know, that's just personal preference. It's just because it's a little on the repetitive side.
Great stuff. Thanks, Mike. Good opener.
Joe
B., you might want to talk about your Leather Records.
Yes, I mail ordered out. I was a contributor and subscriber to Brian Slagle's newsletter at the time, and he had this advertisement, and I'm like, what am I looking at? And I immediately mailed out for it. So I had the Leather Records, and I subsequently got the Elektra record mix by Roy Thomas Baker, famously producer for Queen. I drove from Atlanta down here to Florida, so I delved into the entire catalog, and it was a lot of good, a lot of bad. I will say the worst songs, if there are any, off these first two albums are the best songs on some of the other albums.
True that.
So my favorite on Too Fast for Love is Piece of Your Action. I just think it just takes it to another level, especially with Mick Mars' slide guitar. It's the good Mick Mars slide guitar from the beginning. Some of his slide guitar in the subsequent albums are pretty bad. Is pretty bad to my ears. Least favorite is Merry Go Round Around. I agree with Mike. I mean, it's a great song, but it's a little repetitive. And it's interesting that the Too Fast for Love, I do like the original version with the slow intro on the leather records as opposed to the electric. Although the electric is a little bit heavier. Like Come On and Dance, I think is a lot better on the Electra record mix. But yeah, so it's Piece of Your Action as my favorite and Merry Go Round as my least favorite on the album.
Great stuff, Joe. And just to our viewers, that leather record on vinyl is worth a pretty penny. Check it out on Discogs.
Yes, especially if you have it in white. I didn't get it in white vinyl. I have it in black, but they had a white vinyl version as well.
But if you want it on CD, it's easy to get. Well, I don't know how easy, but it's on the box set.
Yep, I've got that. The wonderfully named song, what is it called? Songs to Crash Your Car To? Oh.
Yeah, music to crash your car to.
Yeah.
It's bad taste.
Anyway, more of that later. My favorite song, Livewire. I just think it's a ball of energy. It's like that English UK glam band Sweet, but a little bit edgy, gritty, and punkier. It's just a ball of energy. I love the song. I love the video clip, and that's the Motley Crue I love. They were kind of really exciting. You could see that this band had a sound that goes back to the 70s and brought a bit of what was happening contemporary, but it just sounded fresh and energetic. My least favorite song is probably On With The Show. It's a little bit mawkish and a bit cheesy, and that's a trait of Motley Crue that becomes more prevalent as you go deeper into the record discography. There's mawkishness.
It's Nicky's autobiography.
Yeah. Well,
more on that later.
Yeah, there's two types of songs in Motley Crue. There's the Nikki Sixx autobiography, and then there's the Ginger Lynn type lyrics, which we'll talk about as we go through the 8 albums or so. Shout at the Devil. Melissa Nee. Favorite, least favorite.
You got to go with the title track, Shout at the Devil. That song is it's anthemic. It's so great live. I saw this tour and they were just energetic and they were so much fun and everybody was really into it. And when that song came on, everybody was shouting at the devil. It's just, I think that is a good example of Motley Crue, and where I think that they where I think they do really well. Where I think they do not so well is God Bless the Children. Again, they don't, the slower stuff on Motley Crue, slow stuff doesn't work for me. So I find this just song kind of sappy and just maybe even, I don't want to say disingenuous because maybe that's not the right word, but just kind of like it doesn't fit their profile. It doesn't sort of fit their MO, I guess. So yeah, those are my 2.
You could probably do a CD of just interlude tracks. You know those tracks that don't go more than 1 or 2 minutes? Yeah.
Peter, if I may, I always thought that this particular interlude track was more Sabbath inspired, how Sabbath would do like an acoustic bit before a really heavy slammer. And I kind of felt like maybe this was them copying Sabbath. Just my opinion.
Okay. Mike, best song, least favorite song?
Man, this was hard because I love this album and I easily could have gone with Shit at the Devil as well. But I ended up going with Too Young to Fall in Love. It's a slower one compared to those other tracks like Red Hot, but it's got a great groove. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, that's Tommy Lee's greatest groove on Too Young to Fall in Love. And, I just have such great, strong, happy childhood memories associated with that song. I can remember going to a local carnival and that song was playing on the sound system. And I just happy memories. So Too Young to Fall in Love. And A least favorite was difficult as well because I really like Shout at the Devil, but I ended up going with Knock 'em Dead Kid. And for the same reason as I went with Merry Go Round, I find it a little on the repetitive side. Knock 'em dead, kid. Knock 'em dead. You know, a little on the repetitive side for me. That was my two picks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Joe B.
Yeah, this album is epic. It's just about perfect for me. And it builds up. My favorite song is Danger because it just builds up and builds up. And then Danger goes to another level where they just made this kick-ass album and they're singing about Hollywood and you can smell the urine. You can see that's Hollywood of the 80s and 90s where it's just, you see the scumbags and that life in Hollywood. And Tommy goes off on the drums. I mean, Tommy's a superstar throughout this album and the first album, every album basically, except for the one he's not on. But this, he just goes off. It's just great stuff. We had a previous episode we've talked, and I think I really threw a curveball and I told you Danger was my favorite Motley Crue song. But it's just great. I absolutely love it. And because the album's so perfect, yeah, God Bless the Children of the Beast. This little interlude is by far the only thing that's not worthwhile on this album. Everything's great, including the cover of Helter Skelter, which is just kick-ass. It's just, this album's perfect for me.
Okay, thank you. Well, my favorite is Shout at the Devil. I think this is everything I like about Motley Crue around this era. It's bombastic, it's tribal, it's kind of doomy. And Vince's vocal lines in the pocket, it kind of suits the material. And I love that gang vocals. So gang vocals were very big in hair metal or metal around this period. And I think this is one of the best gang vocal type of songs, the shout. So this is a real audience pleaser. And, it's rusted on. They will not ever, never not play this song. And this is where Vince gets the microphone, has a bit of a rest, says one or two words, puts the microphone out.
Good. Probably best now that we let other people sing.
Yeah, a bit of a cardiac rest song for Vince Neil. My least favorite is Helter Skelter because I'm a bit of a purist. I like the original version on the White Album because the Beatles song was so amped up and energetic and bonkers. When John Lennon says, "I've got blisters on my fingers," I think Motley Crue kind of sap out the essence of that song. So for me, being a purist, I'm not as fussed on this version. So anyway, Shout at the Devil, and I think it's probably in my top 3 Motley Crue albums. I love it. All right, here we go. Theatre of Pain came out in 1985, which was a significant image change for Motley Crue. I think the reaction with a lot of fans when they saw, went down to their local record store, picked it up and looked at the back cover was WTF, wasn't it? Melissa, did you feel a bit that way?
Yeah, and it's funny because my sister, who's 7 years younger than me, thought Vince Neil had a poster of him on one of those life-size posters on her bedroom wall facing her bed, so that when she woke up in the morning, that was the first person she saw, and he was just all glammed out. He looked like a chick, right? It was the first time where you really where you were seeing the guys really looking feminine, really with the full makeup and the whole. Yeah, this is for me, this is probably the last good album for me. The rest of it gets spotty for me. But after this is where it didn't really work that well for me. I sort of got off the train. But the song that I'm going with, the song that I like the best on this album is City Boy Blues. I think that when we did this show before, when we talked about Theatre of Pain, everybody talked about how much they really liked that song. And it's just a great song. It's a great opener. Also great live. And for my least favorite, I was gonna say Home Sweet Home because again, sappy. But I also Smoking in the Boys' Room. I'm kind of with you on the purist type of thing where I really like the original. I see what they try to do, and they updated it, and it was huge, right? I mean, that video was on MTV every 5 minutes. Joe will tell you, right? I mean, you couldn't escape that video. It was every time you turned around, it was massive. And that song, along with Home Sweet Home, is what catapulted that album, is what really got people buying that album. But it's not one of my favorites on that album. The cover of Smoking in the Boys Room. I think the original is better.
All right, thanks, Mel. Mike.
I kind of wish I rewatched our Theater of Pain episode that we did. I want to remain consistent with my feelings before, but I will remind viewers that when I reviewed Theater of Pain on my website, I was told by one reader that I had a dead cat stuck in my ears. So keep that in mind when I choose my selections. I went with Louder Than Hell as my favorite track. I think that's fairly consistent with what I said before. It's based on Hotter Than Hell, a song that was considered for Shout at the Devil. So it comes from that group of songs that they were writing. And I just think it has that heaviness that I'm looking for. It's kind of a block-headed groove, but I dig it. It's not that, there's nothing intelligent about Louder Than Hell, but I like it. It's a good rocker. It's the one that, and I should say, I should add this as well. Joe mentioned he's been listening to Motley Crue in the car. I've listened to Motley Crue in the office pretty much all week. And this is the song that stuck with me from Theater of Pain, is Louder Than Hell. None of the other ones have stuck with me. Now, as a least favorite, I think I'm going to be consistent as well, but I think I'm going to pick Fight for Your Rights. I find it kind of clunky. What else can I say about it? I think it's a little pretentious sometimes, that song. Motley Crue, they're a girls' cars drinking and boozing kind of band. What are they trying to pretend to be here? And I just don't like that chorus. When it comes right down to it, it's the fact that I don't like the fight for your rights. Fight for your rights. I just don't like it. It's like a bad Sammy Hagar track. Sorry, Tim Derling.
Got nothing much more to say after that. Over to you, Joe B.
These next two albums are terrible. They really are. Theater of Pain ain't Girls, Girls, Girls. My opinion. When this came out, Vince Neil has the vehicular manslaughter DUI. We're pissed about that. Then they come out with this direct. They end Shout at the Devil with Danger, which I think is just a masterpiece, as I just said before. And then they come out with this. The bar was so high, and a lot of bands have done this, but this might be the worst, honestly, as far as a follow-up of a brilliant album. My favorite song is Home Sweet Home. It saved the album. And by the way, Nikki Sixx will agree with me. He's not a fan of these next two albums himself because he was so whacked out while recording. Home Sweet Home. It's a great ballad. Tommy Lee's a huge Aerosmith fan. He just copied Aerosmith's Home Tonight, basically. And it works. I think it's a really good song on a bad album. It's hard to pick. Save Your Souls is probably my least favorite, but I couldn't get through this album. I was skipping a lot of tracks. But Home Sweet Home is definitely a standout track, and rightfully so. That's what saved the album. Smoking in the Boys Room, Vince did that with his cover band, before he joined Motley Crue, and he pulled that out because they were really grasping at straws to get material for this album with his legal problems and Nikki's addictions and everything.
Yeah, I think the producer was saying it was very hard to marshal him in the room. And this is one of the most difficult recording sessions that he's ever done. So it wasn't an easy album to put together. I think my favorite is Tonight We Need a Lover, because I think this is like stoner hair metal. It's really dope. It's got a very basic riff. It kind of bludgeons you over the head, but at the same time, it's in your head, and that probably does the trick. I think there's a lot of... you can tell that this is a substance abuse album because the grooves are so deep and stoner-like. It's sort of very sluggish. It's like dinosaurs recording an album. But to me, I've always liked this song because I just think it's kind of stoner. And that appeals to my musical palette. Home Sweet Home is my worst. I've never liked this song. I've found it cheesy and mawkish, and it's their version of Beth. You know, the whole I'm on the road and I'm coming home, baby, and don't worry about all the bad things I've done. It's sort of, take me to your heart, feel me in your bones, just one more night, and I'm coming off this long and winding road. Shakespeare it ain't. Home Sweet Home. It's my least favorite song. Sorry, Joe. No, I'm really sorry. Melissa, Girls, Girls, Girls.
All
What's your
right,
favorite
so
track?
I will agree with Joe on this. This album. This is where it really drops off for me. That said, I did go to this tour. I did see this show. I did see the next tour as well. So for this album and the next album, I'm kind of going more off what I saw live. So I'm definitely going to pick Wild Side, which is the best song on this album. An album that, when it comes to worst songs, I could have just said the rest of the album. But I gotta go with Nona, the absolute worst power ballad or whatever it is that they do. That's the song, absolutely. It's probably my least favorite Motley Crue song in the history of Motley Crue. I hate this song.
Oh, I'm gonna one up you, Melissa, as we go into Italy.
I absolutely
And I've got
can't
one
stand
too.
this
I got
song.
one. I got one that's a lot worse.
I reckon it's the
So-
same one as mine.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that because I have quite a few. As we get further down the line, I could, like I said, I could just like list half an album. But this is probably up to this point. A lot of the songs, even like Home Sweet Home, that I say was my least favorite song on the album, whatever, I could deal with it. You heard it, like I said, you heard it all the time. It's fine. But this song, it's a skip. And I'm not usually a skipper, but this is a song that I just skip. I just have no interest in listening to ever again. Heard it more times than I needed to hear it after one time. So, Nona.
Okay, so just recapping, best song, worst song. Worst song is Nona, and best song?
Wild Side.
Wild Side. Fantastic. Alrighty. Mike.
I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how this show unfolds because I actually like Girls, 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 the album, with the exception of my least favorite song, which we'll get to. I actually like this album, and I thought it was an improvement over Theater of Pain. And I especially liked that Motley Crue had kind of like dropped the goofy makeup and kind of went out looking more like street clothes. I was really behind this album. I figured somebody else was going to pick Wild Side, which is, as Melissa said, the best song in the album. But for my favorite song on the album, I initially said All in the Name Of, but then I was listening to Girls, Girls, Girls on the way home from work yesterday, and I was uncomfortable with the lyrics. She's only 15. She's the reason that I can't sleep. You say illegal. I say legal's never been my scene. So I'm changing my pick. I'm changing to Something for Nothing. It's got a sleazy groove to it. I love that kind of shout-along chorus. Something for nothing. I love that they misspelled something. The lyrics are just, it's like he's a gigolo. Okay. So that's the lyrics. Leave the money on the table where it's easy to see. I love some of the lyrics. Trying to think now, maybe it's probably best if I don't repeat them. So Something for Nothing I'm going to go with that as my favorite song, with a concession to Melissa that Wild Side is the best song. My least favorite song, agreeing with Melissa again, Nona. And for those of you who don't have the Motley Crue remasters, for your enjoyment, there's an extended version of Nona on there that's a full song. Oh my God.
No need for it. There's no need.
Like I'm telling you guys, like I said, I like Girls, Girls, Girls. And when I first got it, which was actually well after the release date, was years later. When I first got it, Nona stuck out like a sore thumb. There was never a point in my life where I liked Nona. It's only because of my obsessive compulsive disorder where I have to listen to an album straight through, can't skip songs. It's only for that reason that I know Nona, because otherwise it would be an easy skip. Easy skip. And it's not like, and I'm sorry for going on here, but on Shout at the Devil, we had God Bless the Children of the Beast, which both of you guys, you didn't like it. But I think Nona is not even close to that level. Nona, God Bless the Children of the Beast would be way up here, and Nona is like, the bar is so low. We're talking about Jim Cameron can't even find the bar in his submersible. That's all I'm going to say about Girls, Girls, Girls.
Right. Thank you very much. Joe B.
Yeah, this album's bad. You know, it has that happy guitar. It's still tuned down. I don't know. The slide guitar annoys me. Vince's lyrics annoy me. All right, my favorite song is Wild Side, but You're All I Need almost came there because I like the fact it was copied off of a Jack Wagner song, right? And he lost a girl to him, so he wrote this evil song. Almost, but Wild Side's my favorite. Least favorite, Jailhouse Rock. It's a complete piece of crap. It's live. It's terrible. I don't know why you play it. I don't know why you include it. They're just looking for more filler. And that's saying a lot because there's a lot of filler and songs that I skipped. Yes, I dislike Jailhouse Rock more than Nona. And yes, I will stand by there is a much worse Motley Crue song in the catalog. I stick with this band through thick and thin. I am completist with this band. There's some bands where I jumped off. I stuck with this band. But Wild Side's my favorite. Least favorite, Jailhouse Rock live.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I think Girls, Girls, Girls was a step up. I'm on Team Mike on this one. I really think that it got a little bit gritty. Some of the subject matter was a little bit more street, and it was a change of direction. And to me, it sounds more lively. Whereas the previous album, they're all stoned, and it just sounds like, you know, a drug album. Sounds really sluggish. But this one sounds kind of brighter. And I've always had a soft spot for Girls, Girls, Girls. It's a delightfully sleazy, I'd call it stripper rock. And yeah, I like it. It still gets played on the radio today. I think it's one of the highlights of their song set. It's pretty basic riff, but I think it's the whole ethos of Motley Crue in 1987. It's a lot of fun. Again, these are albums that I lived with in the day, and they're kind of sort of like a semi-entry point. So maybe I'm a little bit more sentimental. But yeah, Girls, Girls, Girls for me. Least favorite is Jailhouse Rock. I hate it when he has those fake endings, you know, and then it starts up again, and then you think the song's over. To me, that's just pulling the rug from under my feet. So Jailhouse Rock, yeah, I think they're sort of running out of ideas. I don't know. There's a common theme about Motley Crue and cover songs. This could be a recurring topic of conversation in today's show. We shall see. All right, so now we go to the year 1989, and this was the uber smash for Motley Crue. Went to number one all around the world. So Motley Crue, by this stage in America, did not quite crack the number one slot. Now, Girls, Girls, Girls got to number two, beaten by Whitney Houston, but I think there was a bit of a payola that might be, check out a show that Joe B and I did. They may have been a little bit ripped off, but officially, this was the first number one album for Motley Crue. It was a smash all around the world. And yeah, we're talking about Dr. Feelgood. So, Melissa, what is your favorite and least favorite song of this uber smash album?
Yeah, I will say that what I did like about Girls, Girls, Girls going into Dr. Feelgood was they did I did prefer the biker aesthetic, more the street aesthetic than the glam aesthetic. Yeah, this was a massive album, massive album. For me, I got to go with actually one of my favorite Motley Crue songs in general, and that's SOS, Same Old Situation. I just think it's really catchy. It's a song that you can sing along to. So I like that song. I think it's a fun song. And then I'm going to go with Time for a Change. Again, Vince getting introspective is just weird for me. He's just not that deep.
Yeah, and this is the song. Did they ever play this live, Melissa, where he gets the guitar and he kind of fakes that he's actually strumming a few chords? No, I don't know. Anyway,
No.
maybe it's in my imagination. This is the sort of song, if they did play it, he'd put the
But
guitar
he brings
on
out a guitar and
strum it.
Don't Go Away Mad.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
I own that guitar. I have a Vince Neil guitar. I own
No
a Vince
way.
Neil guitar. I'm not even kidding.
I bet you can play it better than him.
Does it have strings on it?
Not currently, Joe, actually.
I don't think it had strings on it when he played it either.
No, well, it definitely wasn't plugged in.
All right.
Alrighty. Thank you. Mike.
Well, excellent segue, Joe, because my favorite song from this album is Don't Go Away Mad, Just Go Away. And it's because it has that acoustic backing. I was a sucker in 1989 for electric acoustic songs like that. It's catchy. Come on, it is catchy. Motley Crue, I was really, like Melissa said, this album was huge. Worldwide, it was huge. And I was a sucker for Motley Crue. They had so much going for them at that time. As a kid, I really supported any band that had kind of like an anti-drug stance, and all of a sudden here's Motley Crue with we're clean and we're mean, and I was way behind it. And I think you can hear it on the album. They worked hard on this album, and Bob Rock worked them hard on this album. And as a patriotic Canadian, I have to say that Bob Rock in Little Mountain Sound, that's my favorite recording environment right there. So this album sounds fantastic, and I think Don't Go Away Mad, it sounds great. That acoustic just chimes through. And then when it picks up halfway through the song, Tommy starts beating those drums, and Vince is playing the fake guitar chords on his guitar that he used to bring out for this part of the show. Yeah, I love everything about this song. Everything about it. Even the chorus, it was, it wasn't Steven Tyler clever, but it was reaching. It was reaching to be a Steven Tyler clever kind of song. And also a wonderful music video. Just loved the music video. I loved the lean, clean, and mean Motley Crue. But this album is not a 5 out of 5 star album. There's some stinkers on there. And my stinker is Sticky Sweet. I just don't find anything appealing about the song, the melody, the riff, nothing about it. I've never liked it. And the weird thing was, I bought the first single for this album when it came out, Dr. Feelgood, and the B-side was Sticky Sweet. And I was like, this is what's the album going to be like? If this is the song that they're giving us as the other track to hear, what is the album going to be like? And I don't know why they stuck that song on the first B-side. It just didn't do anything. And that's my favorite and my least.
Right. Thank you very much. Joe.
So this is where they come back for me, and I'm in. And I listened to it today, and it still stands up. It's not a great album. It's a very good album. Dr. Feelgood is by far my favorite song on it, but it's strong all the way throughout until Time for a Change, which is my least favorite. But yeah, the production from Bob Rock just takes them to another level. You like the fact that they're lean and mean and they're clean, or somewhat clean, who knows? But their look, their sound, sonically, it's a lot better than the previous two albums. I remember walking into a record store when it was released and hearing Slice of Your Pie, and that ending is basically, I mean, they do a lot of ripoffs on this album. They ripped off the Beatles on that song. With Kickstart My Heart, they rip off Montrose. No one ever talks about that. I don't know why Ronnie Montrose didn't sue them.
And Sweet.
Scooter.
It's a Sweet song that's exactly like that.
Right, exactly, yeah. But yeah, it's great. And Without You was like the perfect girlfriend song for me. That was, yeah, to go out with a girl and she likes a Motley Crue tune and everything's right with the world. So I was all back in on Motley Crue in this album. Dr. Feelgood's my favorite. Least favorite is Time for a Change. But it's a very strong album.
Yeah, thank you. I love Dr. Feelgood. I think that's one of their top 5 songs of all time. And I think that Guns N' Roses with Appetite for Destruction was the game changer and made rock and roll a bit more gritty. And a lot of topics were more street cred, stories from the street. And I think Motley Crue were looking and thinking, shit, we've got to lift our game. So I think if it wasn't for Appetite for Destruction, you wouldn't get a Dr. Feelgood, that gritty, heavy, deep riffage with basically they're doing storytelling. And, Vince's vocals are remarkable. He doesn't have that helium vocals that he's in with the earlier albums. He's a bit more relaxed. He's a bit more back in the groove. And I think what Bob Rock did with his vocal lines was quite remarkable. So it's Motley Crue with storytelling, and I think it's one of their best songs. Sorry, Mel, but SOS, I hate that song. I can't explain why. I just don't like it. It's just really a stupid. I know they write some dumb songs, but it's sort of stupid. Same old situation. SOS. That's the one where I call it a bourbon time song. As soon as that comes on, I go, yeah, bourbon. I go to the bar and have a bourbon and then come back. And then Mick's playing that guitar solo and I go out and have another bourbon. And then Tommy, anyway, we could go on. All right. Motley Crue, 1994. The times are changing, as Bobby Dylan said. So there was this tidal wave called grunge, and all these bands, it was like this big tidal wave that came, and then suddenly there were all these bands that were extinct. So Motley Crue had a new lead singer called John Corabi, and they put this self-titled album, and a lot of bands, a lot of hair metal bands or established bands kind of re-established themselves, didn't they? And just did the name like a self-titled debut sort of sounding name. So Mel, what is your favorite song off this album and least favorite?
So I actually really like this album. I remember when it came out, at first I was like, oh God, here we go, another Motley Crue, whatever. Then you find out that it's got a different singer and you go, all right, well, let me check this out. And the first single, Hooligan's Holiday, and I really liked it. And I thought maybe the change was good and that it was a good thing that they were maybe going to move on, and I was back on board. So I'm going to go with Hooligan's Holiday because that was the one that kind of got me to check this album back out again. And there's not really any songs on here that I dislike. I mean, I was looking at the list because I didn't write down. I dropped the ball on this one and I didn't write the thing or whatever. But I actually like this whole album. So I'll go with the ballad as always.
Yeah, that's fine. Cool. No worries. Michael, what do you think of this album?
Well, Peter, I think in order for me to discuss this album, we need to back up 3 years to 1991 and a track called Primal Scream.
Thank you.
And when that came out.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll briefly describe Primal Scream, which is it's groove. It's all groove. And then Mick comes in with this slide. And I'm thinking to myself, man, Motley Crue have hit some kind of peak here. This is serious. Like, they are still with Bob Rock at this point, and they had that huge drum sound. Maybe Tommy's best drum sound, possibly. Hard to say. But I was like, I am 100% behind what Motley Crue are doing. And they were talking in the press, we're going into the studio, and we're going to make a groove album. And we're going to have no ballads. Well, that ended up not being true. Bob Rock talked some sense into them and said, guys, you need to have some kind of commercial ability. But when they changed singers, I was worried, right? And then Vince Neil came out with a killer solo album. And I was like, how are Motley Crue going to top this? But in my opinion, they did. This album is a three-way tie for like 5 out of 5 star Motley Crue albums for me. 5 out of 5 stars for the self-titled Shout at the Devil and Too Fast for Love. Love John Corabi. And, as an added bonus, he just seems like one of the nice guys of rock. Yeah. But I love his voice. That, and the way that he would put that little curl at the end of every line. And Motley Crue really scored when they found that guy. They really did. I don't think they appreciated what they found, but they added a guitar player to the band. All of this is building up to my number one song, which is Welcome to the Numb. I'm a sucker for slide guitar, okay? And if that isn't Mick Mars's catchiest slide guitar riff, Welcome to the Numb. It's got a groove to it. It's the grooves that Motley Crue promised us. They delivered. Tommy's sounding great. There's so much production stuff going on. There's a lot of backwards, echoey, you can hear like tapes and stuff. Freaking amazing song. Bob Rock brought out the best of Motley Crue. the absolute best. And like Melissa, I like pretty much the whole album. But if I had to pick a least favorite, I'd go with Poison Apples because it sounds the most like old school Motley Crue. And that wasn't what I wanted at that time. I wanted this new Motley groove, the power to the music, the Uncle Jack. I wanted more, more. And I thought, there's no way in hell Motley Crue are going to have a number one album ever again. But at least they put out a butt kicker that might have a chance if people gave it a chance, which they did not. And that sadly, well, we'll get to the next chapter, but that's an album I love. And it's, again, Welcome to the Numb, favorite, Poison Apples, least favorite.
Just a quick question to everybody. Do you think that the album would have done better if they retitled the name of the band?
No.
No?
Because then they would have got lost in the sea of other bands that did the same thing, such as Bonham, who became Motherland. That didn't work. It didn't work.
But plus the thing is the people who did check it out because it was Motley Crue, right? I mean, like you were saying, if it was a different unknown sort of name out of nowhere, nobody would have paid any attention. I think a lot of people did give it a shot because it was Motley Crue. There was that curiosity factor for those of us who knew that there was a different lead singer, and then there was the ones who didn't know there was a different lead singer and said, "Oh, Motley Crue," and chase that shiny object. But I do, if we can just for a moment tell you that I'm glad you talked about Primal Scream because it's my favorite. It's my favorite song. It's my favorite Motley Crue song of all time. That's all. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, look, I was like Mike when I heard that song. I thought, gee, this is exciting change. And I can't wait for the next album, but then it never eventuated. So there was obviously a lot of internal stuff that was happening. And you look at the gap between Feelgood in 89 and Motley Crue in 94, that's kind of deathly, isn't it? To have that long a gap. Well, look at the changes in rock that was happening during those years. So they just left it too late. If they were able to sneak in an album in 1990 and at a stretch early 91, they might have had another smasher, another number one. But that wasn't to be. Joe B.
Yeah. So Primal Scream, excellent song. They take it to another level. I find out that, the breakup with Vince, really, I was not happy about that. So this album still to this day, it's a very good album, but it doesn't sound like a Motley Crue album to me. Should they have named it another name? I don't know. I think a lot of people jumped off the Motley Crue boat at this time, obviously, because lack of sales. It did go gold, but man, they were playing small theaters when a few years earlier they were selling out multiple nights at hockey arenas. So, but it's a very good album, and the production is great. It's super heavy. I love Uncle Jack. I like the subject matter because it resonates with me. I know people that have gone through that stuff. That stuff went on all the time where I grew up, and it was kept secret, and he brought it to the forefront. It's just heavy. I like the subject matter. It's just ballsy. And it's hard to pick as everyone said, it's hard to pick a least favorite. So Poison Apples, I'd have to agree with Mike on that if I had to pick one, because that sounds, or Love Shine maybe with the acoustic. But yeah, it's a great album, but I just can't fully grasp it as a Motley Crue album.
Would it be in your top three, Joe?
No.
Sorry, putting you on the spot. Where would it sit in the discography?
I don't, you know what? It's hard for me to put it in the discography. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is in my top three. So my favorites are Too Fast for Love, Shout at the Devil, and this. And, reading a lot of sort of other fans' opinions on the catalog, a lot of them have the same opinion, those three albums. I rate this really super highly because they found, it's like a gift from God. They found a singer that had this wonderful bluesy, gritty voice. And he had so much swagger and charisma. Hooligan's Holiday, I love that song. It's soulful, it's got a growl, it's got a grit, and it's got this wonderful, gnarly riff. And Tommy Lee's drumming performance on this album, let alone this song, is just superlative. So I love everything about this song. It's swagger, it's charismatic. I was watching the film clip again last night, and I was just really getting off on it. It was just such a great song. My least favorite, not because it's a bad song, but probably the one I sort of gravitate to the least is probably Drift Away, which is the closing ballad. There's a lot of heavy songs on this album, so I guess they decided to put a little palate cleanser right at the end, which is fine, but it's probably out of all the songs something, I don't gravitate to as much as the others. But what an album. But it didn't sell. And, it got to number 7, but the store, I think the only territory that really took to this tour was Mexico, where they were still playing stadiums. But everywhere in America, as you said, Joe, there was empty seats.
And you know what? I don't know why they played a small theater in Maryville, Indiana. That's the closest they played to Chicago. But then they had, I don't even know if I know they then did a summer thing with King's X, and I don't know if they came through Chicago or not with that. And if they did, I'm sorry I missed that, because that would have been awesome, them together with King's X. But yeah, they really fell off on this as far as popularity. And then we get to the next album.
If I could add a personal anecdote here, the 1994 album, that's the year that I started working in my record store. And I'll never forget, there was a massive stack of Motley Crue 1994 CDs behind the counter that went unsold, right next to a massive stack of David Lee Roth, Your Filthy Little Mouth. Unsold, unlistened, nobody cared.
Yeah. So it was like the cutouts. I think I seem to recall that too, seeing a lot of CDs in the $10 bin with the cutouts for Motley Crue. It was definitely a step down. But
this was pre-cutout. This was like our initial order, anticipating how many we were going to sell, and the stack only went down like that. That's how many we sold,
Yeah.
And eventually they would have become the cutouts, but we had them before they became the cutouts.
Well, that raises another thing, Mike, because it did attain gold status. I wonder if that's truly gold status, how many returns? Because gold is the certification of how many albums I think there's some sort of calculation, but it doesn't actually accurately attribute to how many sales over the counter. So I wonder if that's totally accurate.
But is it gold? Did it go gold right away, or has it gone gold since? Because I think that there is definitely more love for this album now than there was in 1994. I think a lot of people have revisited it and got on board with it that didn't give it the time of day in 94.
They would have to recertify it, which costs the record company money, which they're probably not interested in spending. But you're right that if like 50,000 copies were sold to record stores and 10,000 copies got returned a year later, who knows?
Mike, one thing they released, they're always re-releasing their catalog, but they released something a couple years ago where they didn't even include. This was like Persona non grata. They didn't even recognize this. And then if you watch that awful Dirt movie, they make the John Corabi like an idiot, and the whole movie was terrible. But
well, they have rewritten history, haven't they?
And I think that's due to the fact that Corabi, they've had lawsuits back and forth. So they're basically like, F this guy. We don't, he's persona non grata, I think is the words that Joe used.
On the final tour, which wasn't the final tour, during Tommy Lee's gigantic roller coaster drum solo, they did play a snippet of Hooligan's Holiday. I was surprised by that and pleasantly surprised.
All right. So we go to the return of Vince Neil for the Generation Swine album. Very different sounding album yet again. Mel, what's your favorite and least favorite track off this album?
So, full disclosure, I don't own this album. I never owned this album. I was disappointed that he came back, actually. I kind of thought that maybe there was a new era of Motley Crue, upon us. I have nothing for you on Generation Swine. That goes to show how little I.
All right, I'll make up for it when you get to me.
Let me.
I know.
Okay, so for the record, Mel has abstained from voting on this from this voting, which is right because It is. That's fine. Mike.
Sorry.
So Peter, cast your mind back to 1997, and there was all this hype and all this worry because here comes Motley Crue and they go on the American Music Awards and they play "Shout at the Devil." Only it's what? What is this? It's the riff has changed, the melody has changed. What is going on here? This is the new Motley Crue, and I'm not digging what they did here, but I'm going to listen with an open mind. So the album comes in. I have the Japanese edition, by the way, of Generation Swine, with that awful album cover. And they did this incredibly stupid thing with the packaging where the packaging was backwards. They're like, oh, we're going to do something cool. We're going to reinvent the CD packaging. And they did it backwards. Woo. One good song. No, there's a, I don't want to commit myself to saying one good song, but I like Afraid. I'll go with Afraid. I was working at the record store at this time, and my buddy Trevor, my best friend at the time, said, sounds like Def Leppard. Afraid. And I don't know, maybe a little, maybe. There's a lot of techie kind of stuff going on with their production with little, weird sound effects for rhythms. It's got that prominent, maybe it's a 12-string bass. It's a catchy bass line, whoever's playing it. I don't know. I'm just going to refer to it as the bassist at this point because we don't really know who plays bass. But it's a cool sound. I think it's a 12-string bass, but I'm not certain. I know the bassist has dabbled in 8 and 12-string basses on past albums. Got a good chorus. The video sucked. What was Vince Neil doing with red hair? I don't know. This is a dark time, my friends. And to give some historical context, Motley Crue were working on a follow-up album with John Corabi. There's a song on here co-written by John Corabi. They were working with Bob Rock. And then they switched gears. And I think, personally, for budgetary reasons, they could not work with Bob Rock anymore. And so they went with Scott Humphrey, who was like an engineer on some Little Mountain Sound productions. Scott Humphrey from my hometown of Kitchener, Ontario. Scott Humphrey, who dated the mother of my friend Trevor, who said that Afraid sounds like Motley Crue. We're talking local. I can't stand Scott Humphrey's production. He ruins everything he touches. He throws techie crap into everything. He's a keyboard player by nature. He's a programmer by nature. I don't like Scott Humphrey. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to insult a local hero, but and according to their book, The Dirt, he almost broke up the band at this point. Mick Mars was ready to hand in his resignation. Which leads me to my least favorite song, which is, I could pull a Melissa and choose to abstain, but I'm going to commit myself to a least favorite song. And I'm going to say, Brandon, I love you. I love her. She is your mom. Never let Tommy Lee write lyrics. Never let Tommy Lee sing lead. Never let Tommy Lee do anything, okay? That is the dumbest song. I'm going down. I'm going to put my stamp on this, Peter. You can quote me. The worst Motley Crue song in history is Brandon. And if I may continue to rant.
Stole my shine.
Well, pick another one, Joe. There's plenty. If I may rant one more second. I hate when rock stars get married and have kids and have to put the song on the next album. Liam frickin' Gallagher did that with Oasis too. I'm done.
If there's any beauty or I don't know about Brandon winds up beating up Tommy Lee a couple years ago.
Punched him out. Knocked him right out.
I mean, he beat the crap out of Tommy Lee. Anyway, I was all aboard this reunion. I was so psyched. Thought this was going to be Kiss Part 2. They were on the American Music Awards. I actually liked Shout at the Devil 97. I liked the version of it. I like that they play it live still. They play that version more when I've seen them live.
Do they? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I don't know about these last couple tours, which I boycotted. Anyway, favorite song, Afraid. I think it's a really good song. I think it's a very good album. I mean, they're trying to do too much. Scott Humphreys. Tommy Lee latched on to Scott Humphrey. He did the Method of Mayhem project, I believe.
Thanks, Scott.
I believe they were roommates after Tommy got out of jail, that he roomed with Scott Humphrey.
I think the problem, they're trying to do too much here. They're trying to be Nine Inch Nails. They're trying to be this. They're trying to be that. But I like a lot of this album. I can get through it. I think there's some good stuff on here. Afraid is a really good song. It's one of my favorite Motley Crue songs. The only thing I don't like about Afraid is they have that horrible bridge. I don't know why they do that with the backward tracking and then now she's so afraid out of that. But I remember they played it on David Letterman with Daisy Fuentes, who I had an immense crush on. You can see it. It's on YouTube, and she's there, and they're in the streets of Manhattan. It's so cool. And they played Afraid, and it was kick ass. I didn't mind Vince's red hair, but I thought for sure that this was going to be Kiss Point 2.0 reunion, and it didn't. This bombed. There's stories why it did. It because initially sold really well, and then the record company just took a dump on him. I think the saving grace is that Nicky was able to grab his music, take ownership. They gave it to him for pennies because he had it out with the new Elektra president. My least favorite, I have to agree with Mike. The absolute worst Motley Crue song ever made, Brandon, My Son, You Are the One. Oh, my God. And then the fact that Brandon beat the crap out of him a few years ago, man, this song is horrible. Like, there's nothing that comes close to this garbage. Yeah, terrible song. But Afraid, my favorite song. Brandon, the worst Motley Crue song ever made.
Thank you. I think this is an awful album. This is an awful album, really. And the problem is that usually when albums are written for another singer and you have a switcheroony, it doesn't work. I have a particular beef with, say, Deep Purple with The Battle Rages On, where that was originally for Joe Lynn Turner and they put Ian Gillan in. Vince Neil has come out and said, I think quite recently, that this is the album. He didn't enjoy singing it. He didn't like the material. It was obviously he was, pushed into singing a lot of these songs that have been laid because of economics, commerce, because they would have lost a ton of money just to, do fresh songs. And I don't think Vince does well outside his template, which is party all the time and chicks, drugs, and rock and roll. Anything that's a little bit serious, unless it's very prescriptive like Dr. Feelgood, he's a little bit, he doesn't seem convincing. He doesn't sound authentic. And I think authenticity is very important in rock and roll because people can tell if you're phony and you're not, really into it. I like Afraid. It's got a Smashing Pumpkins type vibe. It's very much of the grunge alternative sound of that era. The bass line on the song is the hero. It takes control of the song. And then you've got that hook where it's the wall of guitars. So it's very contemporary sounding for that particular period. The worst song is Brandon. And I've just got a little, I wrote a letter to Tommy Lee, and I wanted to share my thoughts. Dear Tommy, don't. You are the one, Brandon, who knocked me out. I've got nothing much more to say. Motley Crue, new tattoo.
Actually, Peter, could I add one more thing to Generation Swine? I have no problem with the reunion album with Vince Neil also having multiple lead singers in Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee. What I do have a problem with is that the album opens with Nikki Sixx singing lead. Why would you do that on your reunion album with Vince Neil? Bad idea. That's all.
It just doesn't seem like maybe they were that convinced that this was a good idea when they do that.
Well, it makes you think that maybe Vince wasn't invested in that particular song, and he said, "I'm not doing that shit." And Nick said, "Oh well, I'll have to do it." Maybe it was like a face saver that they had to do it. So I really think if you looked at the graph of Motley Crue and the low points and the high points, this is really still at ground zero. Because Motley Crue with Corabi, artistically it's a high, but commercially it's a low. Now this one is like commercially a bit of a low and artistically a bit of a low, I think.
Yeah.
They were trying to fit in with the 90s, the alternative. Yeah. They're all over the place. So
well, Corabi in the Dirt book, Corabi says that they couldn't figure out what direction they were going, and that one day Nikki Sixx would come in and say, "Okay, so I want you to sing this kind of with a Nine Inch Nails vibe," and then Tommy would say, "Yeah," with a twist like the Sisters of Mercy. And yeah, but make it catchy like the Smashing Pumpkins. And Karabi was like, what are you guys saying? I don't understand.
But I would like to say, since you brought up the Smashing Pumpkins, their first, I'm a Chicago guy. Their first three albums and some of the subsequent albums, the reunion album in 2010, that's pure heavy metal. They were heavier than most of the stuff that was coming out or came out in the 80s. And Billy even says he's a huge Judas Priest fan and Black Sabbath fan, and that heavily influences his music. But anyway, I digress.
All right. As we get deeper, does it get worse or does it get better? Motley Crue, New Tattoo.
New Tattoo, as Pete calls it, New Tattoo. So again, I was not really invested in this album. I had really checked out. I had really decided that my Motley Crue days were over, that when I'm going to listen to Motley Crue, I'm going to go back to the first two albums, or I'm going to go to the self-titled album with John. But I did listen to this album, and the opening track, Hell on High Heels, I do like this song because I think it's reminiscent of old school Motley Crue that I like. It has that sort of vibe. The rest of the album is a mixed bag. There's some good parts here and there, but it's not really anything that I hang my hat on. And the worst song is the title track, because it's like they're country. Is that what they're doing? Country? It's just weird. Vince should not be doing country at all. That song just doesn't work for me at all. So it's Hell on High Heels and New Tattoo, or Tattoo, depending on where you're from. Tattoo? Is that how you say it?
Thanks, Mel. Mike, were you sold on the New Tattoo?
I wanted to be, because at that point I was fed up with Tommy Lee and his programming and loops and raps and stuff. And I was like, Randy Castillo. Now here's a drummer. He was one of my favorite drummers in the 80s when he was with Ozzy. I love the way that he hits the snare, and I love the way that he does these snare rolls. But I wasn't a fan of the album when it came out. Now, the interesting thing is, doing this listening all week, I played New Tattoo 2 or 3 times this week, and I like it more than I did back then. I find the production a bit on the dry side. I don't think it's like all great songs. I think that it could use some severe editing. And it was hard for me to pick a favorite and a least favorite. But I ended up going with Punched in the Teeth by Love as my favorite. And interesting fact is that song was actually written for A Decade of Decadence back in 1991. And they finally used it on New Tattoo. It's got a great, I don't know, Mick Mars. I love the way he plays guitar, honestly. I really do. And I like that riff. A nice heavy song. A nice kind of gang chorus. Punch in the teeth by love. I'm going to need to take a drink here. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with that as my favorite. With my least favorite, I went with, which one? Drag Strip Superstar. I don't like the chorus. Drag strip, superstar. I don't like it. There's a lot of weak material on this album, to be honest. And I kind of hovered between Fake, Porno Star, and She Needs Rock and Roll as my least favorites, but I had to pick one. So it's Drag Strip Superstar. And incidentally, this version is, I think, an Australian import, but it's got a bonus disc with Samantha Maloney, who filled in for Randy Castillo when he became ill.
Yeah, I've actually got that DVD with Samantha Maloney, and it's they play pretty well. But wherever they're playing, I think they're playing at Salt Lake City, you can see that it's only 3/4 full, and that's their concert video. There's like a pan of the audience, and you can see right in the back rafters, there's nobody there. Anyway, Joe B.
Yeah, I checked out on this album. You can't have Motley Crue without Tommy Lee. It's worse than not having Motley Crue without Vince, in my estimation. It just doesn't do it for me. He's so integral to his sound. And yeah, he went off on the rails and did his rap and his solo project and everything else, but it's I don't know. I checked out. So my favorite song is White Punks on Dope, because they do a great copy of a great song. It's a great song from the Tubes, and they do a great version of it. And I could see where Nicky is actually, or was, a white punk on dope. My only disappointment about the song is they don't go into that ending that the Tubes had, which is totally cool. And they skipped that. They just ended the song. That they don't do that part. I wish they would have. But that's the best song for me. I don't know. Hollywood Ending, it kind of blows. Drag Strip Superstar is not good either. But it's a good album. But again, I don't think it's a Motley Crue album. Honestly, you need Tommy Lee. To me, you're just playing. It's the guys playing with a drum machine.
So funny you should say that, Joe, because when I was working at the record store, here's yet another new Motley Crue album that comes out. People are coming into me and they're asking me, "What's the new Motley Crue like?" And I honestly swear to God, Joe, I told them, without Tommy Lee, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like Motley Crue.
Yeah. So
hand on heart,
they do a great version of White Punks on Dope. So that's which is a great song.
It is a great song.
All right, to pick up Joe's words, I think this album blows. It's probably in the bottom couple. You can really tell by the names of the songs what this album's going to be like, can't you? Drag Strip Superstar, that's my favorite. Sorry, Mike, I like it. It's got a chugging, sleazy rock, infectious chorus. It's dumb, but it's fun. It's just one of those I can't explain type moments. And my least favorite is New Tattoo. I think it's really mawkish, cheesy. I'm not a big fan of this. And I agree. You can tell, with not having sort of Tommy Lee on the drums, this album is a lot worse for it. So, no, not one of my favorites. All right, so we wrap it up with the finale, which Saints of Los Angeles came out in 2008. And this is, therefore, the very final Motley Crue studio album. So you've got all the characters back, the four. Mel, what's your favorite and least favorite song of this album?
Everybody's back in action. And this is kind of, I guess, a concept album. I mean,
supposed to be called The Dirt.
Yeah,
that's right. It's supposed to be based on their book.
It's kind of a concept album ish theme. There's a theme that runs through the album, is my point. I don't love this album either. I went with best song on the album, Going Out Swinging. And I don't know if this really counts as a least favorite song because it's that intro LAMF, which isn't really a song, but it's not, I guess it's supposed to sort of set the scene, but it doesn't really set the scene for me. It's just kind of like a weird way to start an album that doesn't really work for me.
Panel, I'm asking a question. I know that Nicky is a huge fan of Diamond Dogs by David Bowie. I see similarities to the beginning of Diamond Dogs with LAMF. I don't know. Maybe
it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah. Although I thought Bowie did it better.
I thought also a throwback to Terror in Tinseltown.
Yep.
Yeah, I get it. There's not much on this album that I really like. I listened to it twice yesterday, and now that we're gonna wrap this up, I probably will never have to listen to it again.
Unless I do another show, Mel.
Let's do another show.
And I drag you.
You drag me on. You know that. You know I love you, Pete. That's why I come back on these shows, even when I'm not in love with the subject matter.
Yeah. Starring Pete and Mel, ranking the songs of Saints of Los Angeles. Oh, no, not again. Mike, are you as harsh on this album as Mel is?
I'm not. I like it better than New Tattoo. I don't think it's a great album. And, of course, there were all those rumors that DJ Ashba played on guitar on this and not Mick Mars. I don't know. I hope not. But, I mean, the bass player on this album's pretty good. I like the opening bass line on LAMF actually. That doom doo 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 doo. I like it, but As much as I wanted to go with the title track, Saints of Los Angeles, is my favorite song, I ended up going with Down at the Whiskey. It's got a really fun vibe. I think it's probably the most fun song on the album. It sounds like vintage Motley Crue. I think Tommy's sounding great on this album as well. I don't know who produced it. Probably self-produced, but you can look that up later. Uh, yeah, so Down at the Whiskey. But this isn't really a particularly remarkable album. It's not like it was basically between those two songs, Saints and Down at the Whiskey. For least favorite song, there's a few contenders, but I ended up going with This Ain't a Love Song, which is nothing like the similarly titled Bon Jovi track. This is just a stupid song. I'm sorry. It doesn't have a good chorus. The lyrics are terrible, quite frankly, and this is a band that we've spent a lot of time discussing their lyrics tonight, haven't we? And this is another low point as far as lyrics go. Melissa's right. This is a semi-concept album based on the book The Dirt, but this particular song doesn't really need. You can't really say it tells any kind of story. It's just, hey, this is a Motley Crue vulgar piece of shit. Oh, God. Anyway.
Let's rock Daydream Nation, mate. You can say whatever you want.
Anyway, that's how I feel about it. But
we don't sugarcoat.
I should say, though, that as an album, just to listen to it from front to back, I don't mind it. I don't mind the listening experience, but it's not like I'm remembering how all the songs went after the fact, which is, a problem that I find with a lot of modern metal albums, especially by heritage bands. You come out, you might play the album and say, yeah, I like that album. Good songs, good riffs, good melodies. But then 2 hours later, can you remember any of them? Saints of Los Angeles.
Yeah, and another fact is they don't play that sort of music on radio anymore, Mike, because when those albums came out, the classic rock era in the 80s, you hear a lot of the songs being played on radio. And you've got that sort of muscle memory, at least with one or two hooks or one or two songs. But these sort of records still come out, but you won't hear it. You have to discover it, don't you?
Very true. And of course, most of these songs never got played live. I don't know how many of them did. This particular version of the album has 15 tracks. Too much. We're forgetting. Shout at the Devil had what, like 9 songs, not including intros and stuff,
Yeah. I saw Motley Crue last year with Def Leppard. Every time I say this is the last time, and then I got hoodwinked by my wife. She wanted to see Def Leppard, and I go, okay, we're going to see Motley again. And they played Saints of Los Angeles, and I think one other, but definitely Saints of Los Angeles was one of the songs. So there you have it. Joe B.
So for 2008, I think this is a really good album because you're grasping for good hooks, some lead guitar at this point, and I still like this album. It's not. I think it's a very good album. Yeah, DJ Ashba had a lot to do with it. It's more, maybe some people have said maybe it's more of a 6 a.m. album than it is a Motley Crue album, but you can hear Tommy play the drums on it and Vince is singing. You can go along with the concept. Down at the Whiskey, I like a lot because it kind of has stick to your gun riff in it. But my favorite song is definitely the title track, Saints of Los Angeles. And they were opening up on the final tour, several tours. When they played with Kiss, they opened up with it as well. They actually came in like it was a mass procession when they did the tour with Kiss, and they walked from the back of the arena to the stage, then opened up with Saints of Los Angeles. Least favorite, yeah, This Ain't a Love Song isn't very good. It kind of, after they played MF of the Year live as well. After that, it kind of starts slowly going down, which happened with a lot of albums that get released in the around 2008 to 2000, whatever. They become too long. The quality of the songs kind of fall off. But the first 6-7 songs on this album, I think, are very good, and I liked it. For 2008, I think it's a really good album.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I used to hate this album, and I've been listening to it recently, and it has improved. It's a lot better than what I remembered. But at the end of the day, I still think it's very noisy, it's down-tuned, and it's very compressed. So there are some songs on here kind of quite irritating. What's it gonna take? I don't mind that song. It's a little bit of self-reflection, and this is a band that is not very introspective or doesn't have a great deal of self-reflection other than what's in front of them in short term. And it's got a bit of tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit of a time capsule of the history of Motley Crue, so I don't mind that song. It's a little bit hooky. The worst is This Is Ain't a Love Song. I think it's crass. It's kind of revolting. The lyrics are terrible. And, when you got sex in lyrics, I like the double entendres of your David Lee Roths and Steve Tyler, who can be creative lyrically and make it fun and cheeky. But this is just rubbish. There's nothing, it's just as crass and out there as you want to be. And if this is the state of rock, I want to get off. Anybody else have any final thing to say about the Crue?
No, I think they, I think that the early stuff is really good. I think the first two albums are excellent. And then they just kind of fell off for me. There's peaks and valleys. I mean, like I said, Primal Scream is my favorite, and that was later on in the discography or later on in their careers. So, I mean, there's peaks and valleys, but all in all, yeah, and like the newer songs, they don't do anything for me either. I don't know how you guys feel about the songs that have just come out. But they don't do anything for me either.
Yeah, the dirt was terrible.
No, I mean the new songs that just came out.
Yeah, the one with John 5. Yeah, not yeah.
The canceled EP. And Melissa,
Canceled,
to be honest with you,
yeah.
this is the very first time in my life that I have not bought the new Motley Crue release. It's the canceled EP. So there you go. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And that's your final word, Mike? Anything else you want to say about
No,
Motley?
it's not my final word because I loved Motley Crue. I loved them. In 1989, they were my favorite band. Dr. Feelgood sold 5 million copies. They were my favorite band in 1989. And like I said, there's 3 albums here that I would rate 5 out of 5 stars. And Too Fast for Love, if I ever want to recapture that feeling of being young again, I can just put on Too Fast for Love and it happens automatically. There's a lot to be said about Tommy Lee's drumming and whoever plays bass. And Vince Neil sings great on a lot of these albums. He really does. I like Motley Crue, but I like John 5, but I just don't like the new songs. That's all. I don't like the new songs, and I haven't liked any of the new songs on the Dirt soundtrack as well. There's a couple highlights here and yon between some of the greatest hits albums. Songs like, oh gosh, that was a 1999 greatest hits album that they did, and there was 2 new songs on there, and I can't remember their names, but Enslaved. And there was another. They do some good songs on these greatest hits albums too. You could take all of those together and make a great EP, but it's in general, unfortunately, with me and Motley Crue, it's diminishing returns as we go through the catalog. I'm afraid I'm out of love. I'm out of love now.
Thank you. Well, as for me, love, hate, love, hate, love, hate. It's just one of those wildly oscillating. But hey, this was fun to do because it got us to revisit and go back to where it all started. And look, thank you. This has been a fun show. Melissa Nee, thank you. Check out Melissa's Metalchat podcast. I'll put the link below. Mike Ladano, grab a stack of rock. And Joe B, always fun to have you on the show. We'll do some more stuff in 2025. God bless you. Tell us what you think your favorite Motley Crue album is, your favorite song, your least favorite song. Tell us, we love reading your comments. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. And one thing's for sure, you'll see these fine people on my channel in 2025 and beyond. I'll catch you later and cheers. See ya.
Happy holidays.